welcome to another Bridgerton book review. Today is the third book in the Bridgerton series, that being An Offer from a Gentleman. Now, I've done a review on The Duke and I, which is Daphne's story, and The Viscount Who Loved Me, which is Anthony's. This one is the second eldest brother Benedict's story. Now, I knew going into this from snippets and spoilers online because the TV series hasn't gone in the order of the books. It did for the first two, it did not for the third. And to be quite honest, I don't see why not. But this is, it's not really an original love story. It leans heavy into the Cinderella retelling. So let's check out the blurb. Sophie Beckett never dreamed she'd be able to sneak into Lady Bridgerton's famed Masquerade ball. Though the daughter of an earl, Sophie has been relegated to the role of servant by her disdainful stepmother. But now, waltzing in the strong arms of the debonair and devastatingly handsome Benedict Bridgerton, she feels like royalty. Alas, she knows all enchantments must end when the clock strikes midnight. Ever since that magical night, a radiant vision in silver has blinded Benedict to the attractions of any other, except perhaps this alluring and oddly familiar beauty dressed in housemaid's garb. He has sworn to find and wed his mystery miss, but this breathtaking maid makes him weak with wanting her. If he offers her his heart, will he sacrifice his only chance for a fairy tale love? Now, knowing the type of book that I usually like to read, you might think from that blurb, well, that's a bit soppy for you, isn't it? And yeah, usually it would, but sometimes a girl just wants romance. Cliched romance. And this wasn't that bad. So in the prologue, we are first introduced to Sophie Beckett, and she is the bastard daughter of the Earl of Penworth. Although she is never openly acknowledged as such, but it's sort of a secret that everybody knows, but nobody acknowledges. Sophie is raised as his ward, for want of a better term, at his country estate, and she is highly educated to that of a lady of the time. So French, music, how to look pretty, how to snare a husband kind of thing, but highly educated for that time. That is until the Earl deems it. He marries. He doesn't remarry. He marries a lady by the name of Araminta, who already has two daughters from a previous marriage called Rosamond and Posy. And Araminta wastes no time in putting Sophie in her place and making sure that Sophie knows that she is not of the same social standing as her two legitimate daughters, Rosamond and Posy. Which is all very well, except the daughters, especially Rosamond, takes her mother's lead in how she treats Sophie. Posy is kind of on the fence, but leaning more towards her mother and her sister. Probably for survival. Now, all goes well in this sort of haphazard kind of living arrangement. That is until the Earl has the selfishness to die. And in his will, everything goes to his wife, Araminta, but he does have the stipulation that Araminta must must care for Sophie until Sophie turns 20. And if Araminta does not heed this, then she will only get £2,000 a year instead of £6,000 a year. Which, although it doesn't sound much in today's economy, in that economy, that was a huge chunk of money that nobody was going to, chuck away. So Araminta does not chuck it away, but she keeps Sophie on as a servant and really, really continues to make her life miserable. I mean, it isn't Sophie's fault that the Earl likes to put it about a bit, but at least he took care of his own. But all of this comes to a head. This is just in the first few chapters, so I'm not doing any spoilers here. All of this comes to a head as the ball of the season comes up. And that is the Bridgerton Masquerade Ball. Now, Araminta, Rosamund and Posey are intent on going to this ball. Araminta is intent on snagging one of the two remaining single Bridgerton brothers, being Benedict and Colin, for one or both of her daughters. So, dressed up to the nines, they swan off to this ball and leave Sophie at home, practically lock her in a closet, cleaning shoes, whatever. But the servants who have been there since the Earl was single and when Sophie was brought in as a child, decide that, for one night, Sophie can be as she should have been born. Act like she should have been legitimate. Act like any lady of society. So they raid the Earl's trunks in the attic, and I think there's something from his mother, or there's this really, really nice, wonderful, floor-length silver ball gown. I mean, it is just beautiful, because they believe that Sophie should at least experience one night of magic and freedom to be able to do as the other ladies do. Which is fine, because nobody will recognise it, because it is a masquerade. That's the point of putting this over. So, hold on one moment. So, everybody will be wearing extremely better disguises of something like this. So, people will be wearing stuff like this get-up that I've got on now, except more tastefully done and more extravagant. Because, really, if it's only this bit that's covered, people will still recognise who I am, for God's sake. In fact, because it took so much faffing to get this thing on, and it's going to stay on. I don't care if it makes me look silly. Now, the one thing that I got from the Bridgerton Masquerade, the meeting of Benedict and Sophie, was unlike the other two books that I've read, that form some lustful attachment. The moment they see each other. This was pure romance. Absolutely pure romance all the way through. I really felt like these two characters were falling in love in front of my reading eyes. And it was so unexpected, because the previous two have been just cliches all round and, oh, she's pretty, I want to bang her. But this was romance. Pure romance. This is the first meeting between Benedict and Sophie, and they're on a secluded balcony above the party below. They can hear it, but it's muffled. People are far away. They're on their own. They're encased in their own reality, where nothing and no one else exists except them. And it's not that they're just flinging longing looks towards each other. They are having a meaningful conversation, as well as these little looks that keep happening. And they're dancing together, and they're close, and they can feel each other. But they're not close lustful, but they're close as in they can feel each other's heat. And you really get the feeling in the writing that these two characters are falling in love. And it's some of the best writing I have ever read from Julia Quinn, because I've read a few of her books by now, and most of them are generic, Mills and Boon bodice rippers. But this was romance. This is my favourite book so far. And I don't get the Benedict hate. There is Benedict hate online, and going into this, I didn't think I'd like him. I didn't think I'd like it. Because he tries to... Of course they don't recognise each other. And for 2 years he searches for Sophie, because she goes back to being Araminta's slave, practically. And he is searching for her every ball, every party, every gathering he goes to. And then he meets her, but because she's dressed as a servant, he doesn't recognise her, and she doesn't have the mask on, and she's not all, done up. But he feels this instant connection to her, and she does remind him of someone, but he can't quite put the finger on what she reminds me of. Because, it's 2 years later, for God's sake. And most people's problem with Benedict is that he asks Sophie to be his mistress. And yes, this book is written in modern times, but it is set in, I think, the Georgian era. And for men to have an official mistress was not a bad thing. I mean, yes, you wouldn't be accepted into the high society, but you would have a distinction of your own. You weren't just a prostitute or a whore. You were an official mistress. And rich men did it all the time. All the time, so much that it was practically expected, if not encouraged by society, to at least have a mistress, and it was highly irregular to be faithful to your wife. Now, in this, Benedict is not married. He's single. He can do whatever and whoever he likes. But people have a problem with him asking Sophie to be his mistress. I don't. You were either a wife, a mistress, or a whore. Such were your choices. Now, not only does Benedict face criticism from readers for asking Sophie to be his mistress, they expect him to ask her to marry him. Now, we do get reasons for him not asking Sophie to marry him, even though that would be, perfect for the romance readers. But Benedict is of a higher social class. And he knows this. He knows that if he asks her to marry him, either his family will look down on her, which we know the Bridgertons by now, but highly likely. Not only that, but society will ostracize her, shut her out, freeze her out, and that is a cold, cold place to be. And Sophie even acknowledges this because she says that she can't marry him because she knows that she's a bastard. She's not a legitimate child. And a high society gentleman marrying a bastard girl, from Benedict's point of view, a bastard servant girl, it just wouldn't wash. It wouldn't have. There'd have to be like some runaway, or if the family would get her killed, or there would be some impediment. But I like that because you're in the mind of both of them, and they think it through. Like, they don't just say, oh, well, she just won't be accepted, or, I won't be accepted in, his world. They repeat the reasons why they will not be accepted and the reasons why they cannot be together. But it's a romance, so hurdles are put in there to be overcome. Now, as you could probably tell from my sort of giddy review, this is my favourite Bridgerton book so far. It really, really is. I enjoyed the characters, I enjoyed the story, I enjoyed the writing. I mean, the writing at times is humorous. The banter between Benedict and Sophie is just glorious to behold. And the conclusion events at the end are not so far-fetched as in some of the other books. I'm looking at The Viscount Who Loved Me because that whole ending of that book was just so far out of left field. You're like, is this the same? I just didn't like that. But this one was believable and I loved it. I also loved the rumour, or the fan fiction tale, that Araminta is actually in the series already, that we've already met her. And she is Cressida's mother. And Cressida would be Rosamund. I quite like that theory because I feel that after season 3, the way that those two characters were left, there could be something in there. Because I think Cressida's mother's name has been confirmed as Araminta. And really, how many Aramintas are available in the Bridgerton world? I would second it, not that many. And probably the reason why Rosamund's name is changed to Cressida is so that people don't guess from season 1 who she is. Because it's Lady Cowper is her mother's title. That's all we've known her as until season 3. And Benedict's season has been confirmed as the next one coming out in 2 years' time. Although why it takes 2 years to put a television series together that only has 8 episodes is beyond me, but live for the hype. I didn't watch season 3, I couldn't be arsed with it. I saw enough clips to think, what the fuck? I haven't read the book yet, so I don't know how close the series was to the book, but it just seemed a little far-fetched from episode 1 to the finishing. And the fact that they split it in half so that people had to pay 2 months worth of like Netflix charges, so it wasn't, you couldn't binge it all in 1 month, you had to go over the 2 and pay twice. No, I didn't like that. Yeah, if you've read this book, let me know your thoughts down below. Let me know what you think is going to happen in Benedict's season, because we are out of sync now with the books. And let me know if you liked it. So, as always, keep dancing.
The wine, embrace the night. Dark stars journey shining bright. Through the trials, through the pain, love and light shall still remain.